backpedaling was never the right move. Watching siblings' relationships deteriorate after the divorce is heartbreaking, and it's clear that the strain began long before that. Kody's refusal to support Isabel during her surgery only worsened things, irreparably damaging his bond with his children. Mykelti Brown, Kody's daughter, has now stepped forward to expose his lies, a daughter refusing to let her father rewrite history. Every child of a narcissistic parent dreads the moment they realize their parent will never truly change, no matter how convincing their performance of growth may seem. For Mykelti, that moment came recently when she saw her father in a New York studio, systematically undoing every ounce of accountability he had shown on Special Forces. World's toughest test, she refused to let him get away with it. This isn't just another sister-wives drama update. This is about a daughter who allowed herself to hope, who cried watching her father take accountability for the first time in years, only to have that hope crushed when he walked it all back. On Special Forces, Kody had an emotional breakdown. He admitted he had lost his relationships with his children, and seemed to finally take responsibility for his failures as a father. Images of him crying and admitting he was the problem went viral, and for a moment, fans and perhaps his children felt hope that he might change. But Kody wasn't in New York to maintain that accountability. On the Val Files podcast and later on Fox News, he reshaped the narrative in ways that would devastate any chance of reconciliation. He claimed that his relationships with all his children were fine before the divorces, and that it was the divorces, not his actions, that pushed his children away. According to him, it wasn't his favoritism toward Robin's children, his absence during crucial family times, or his repeated failures, it was the divorces. He even addressed his Special Forces breakdown, suggesting that while he had taken responsibility under pressure, he now felt it was unfair for him to bear the blame alone. Everyone else's ex-wives, his children had to take responsibility too. In short, the man who had sobbed on national television about losing his children was now walking it all back. For anyone familiar with narcissistic behavior, this is textbook: show accountability when cornered, then retreat to blame and deflect the moment you regain control. But Kody forgot one key audience: his children. Mykelti in particular was watching. Mykelti has built a following for her detailed rewatch commentary on Sister Wives. Known for her thoughtful and insightful perspective, she had allowed herself to feel hope during Kody's emotional moment on Special Forces. She cried watching him appear broken, finally acknowledging the damage he had caused. After years of prioritizing Robin's children and watching her father fail repeatedly, her tears were a testament to the desire she still had for him to be the father she needed him to be. Then came the New York interviews. Kody destroyed that hope. Every word of accountability crumbled as he recast himself the victim. Mykelti, refusing to stay silent, addressed this directly in her Patreon commentary. She flatly rejected his claim that relationships with his children were fine before the divorces. Even on the heavily edited show, viewers could see the fractures forming long before any divorce proceedings. Blaming the divorces, Mykelti insisted, was insane. Her most searing critique came when addressing his Special Forces breakdown. After reflection, she concluded that his tears and words were calculated, designed to satisfy those confronting him and relieve pressure in that moment. His accountability wasn't genuine, it was performance. To realize that a parent's most vulnerable moments are manipulative is deeply tragic. Her husband, Tony, echoed the importance of accountability. He explained that when seeking reconciliation, sometimes taking full responsibility even when others share some blame is essential. Kody, however, seems incapable of understanding this. Every time he walks back accountability, he damages trust further, teaching his children that his words are meaningless and that vulnerability is strategic. Special Forces offered Kody a genuine chance to show growth, to prove he could sustain accountability, and perhaps repair relationships with children like Mykelti who were willing to hope. But he failed. By publicly walking back responsibility, he burned the fragile bridge that still existed. The broader implications are devastating. Mykelti's hope was not only crushed, it validated the distrust of her siblings. They are learning that their father values his ego over his children, that his apologies and tears cannot be trusted, and that reconciliation will be nearly impossible unless he can sustain genuine, consistent change. Kody's actions reveal his priorities. Protecting his ego is more important to him than repairing relationships. Each backtrack, each blame shift ensures that estrangement with his children continues. The fractures were never caused by divorces, they were the result of his choices, favoritism, and repeated absence. Mykelti's courage in calling out her father is a powerful act of truth, giving her siblings permission to acknowledge their own experiences. Her willingness to speak up highlights what Kody is sacrificing with every evasive word. the possibility of genuine connection, the chance to be part of his children's lives, to witness milestones and perhaps, one day, to rebuild the relationships he's damaged. The question now is whether Kody can truly learn from this. Watching Mykelti publicly dismantle the narrative he tried to create should be a wake-up call. But based on years of patterns, sustained change seems unlikely. He performs growth, but only when it serves him. He walks it back at the first moment of discomfort, rewriting history to maintain his ego. Mykelti's tears and courage tell the real story. Kody's children still long for him to be the father they need, but they cannot trust someone who manipulates accountability for comfort. Tony's insight about taking full responsibility is key. Real change requires sustained, genuine effort, not temporary performances. By publicly contradicting his false narratives, Mykelti is not only standing for herself but also protecting her siblings. She is making it clear that they will not allow lies to replace their lived experiences. Kody's chance at reconciliation diminishes with every backtrack, and Mykelti's public call-out is both a warning and a statement of truth. Kody has shown exactly who he is, someone who prioritizes his ego over his children. His children are responding by protecting themselves. Genuine accountability, even when uncomfortable or seemingly unfair, is the only way forward. His children do not need perfection, they need acknowledgement of harm, sustained responsibility, and consistent change. Mykelti's response proves that children are watching, remembering, and refusing to be manipulated. If Kody ever hopes to reconcile, he must recognize the damage his ego-driven reversals cause, and that protecting himself at the expense of his children will only deepen estrangement. Until then, his children and Mykelti in particular will remain justifiably wary, and the consequences of his choices will continue to unfold. Backpedaling was never the right move. Watching the siblings' relationships deteriorate after the divorce is heartbreaking, and it's clear that the strain started long before that. Kody's refusal to support Isabel during her surgery only made things worse, irreparably damaging his bond with his children. Mykelti Brown, his daughter, has now stepped forward to expose his lies, a daughter refusing to let her father rewrite history. Every child of a narcissistic parent fears the moment they realize their parent will never truly change, no matter how convincing their performance of growth may seem. For Mykelti, that moment came recently when she saw her father in a New York studio, systematically undoing every ounce of accountability he had shown on Special Forces. World's toughest test, she refused to let him get away with it. This isn't just another sister wives drama update. This is about a daughter who allowed herself to hope, who cried watching her father take accountability for the first time in years, only to have that hope crushed when he walked it all back. On Special Forces, Kody had an emotional breakdown. He admitted he had lost his relationships with his children, and seemed to finally take responsibility for his failures as a father. Images of him crying and admitting he was the problem went viral, and for a moment, fans and perhaps his children felt hope that he might change. But Kody wasn't in New York to maintain that accountability. On the Val Files podcast and later on Fox News, he reshaped the narrative in ways that would devastate any chance of reconciliation. He claimed that his relationships with all his children were fine before the divorces, and that it was the divorces, not his actions, that pushed his children away. According to him, it wasn't his favoritism toward Robyn's children, his absence during crucial family times, or his repeated failures, it was the divorces. He even addressed his Special Forces breakdown, suggesting that while he had taken responsibility under pressure, he now felt it was unfair for him to bear the blame alone. Everyone else's ex-wives, his children had to take responsibility too. In short, the man who had sobbed on national television about losing his children was now walking it all back. What Kody didn't realize was that his children were watching, and one daughter in particular, Mykelti Brown, was about to make sure the world knew exactly what she thought of his lies. Mykelti, Kody's daughter with Christine, has a Patreon where she provides detailed rewatch commentary on Sister Wives episodes. She's known for thoughtful analysis and insider perspective, often measured in her criticism despite having every reason to be harsher. When the Special Forces episode aired showing Kody's emotional breakdown, Mykelti allowed herself to hope. She cried seeing her father take accountability for the first time in years, for someone who had been estranged from him, who had witnessed his favoritism toward Robyn's children and repeated neglect. Allowing herself to hope was a vulnerable act. But just days later, she saw Kody in New York, dismantling that hope. His interviews made it clear that his breakdown had been strategic performance, not genuine accountability. For Mykelti, the betrayal was crushing. Her tears, her hope, had been manipulated. During her Patreon commentary, Mykelti addressed her father's claims directly. When Kody said all his children had great relationships with him before the divorces, she shut that narrative down immediately. It was false. She pointed out that even on the heavily edited show, viewers could see relationships fracturing long before any divorce occurred. The dysfunction didn't start with the divorces, it started with Kody's actions, absence, and favoritism. Mykelti didn't stop at contradiction. She provided context to show how egregiously false Kody's claims were, calling his explanation insane. She highlighted that blaming the divorces alone was completely divorced from reality, and when she addressed his special forces breakdown, she concluded that his tears and accountability had been calculated. They were designed to get through a high-pressure situation, not to demonstrate genuine remorse. Her husband, Tony, also weighed in, providing perspective on the damage Kody's backpedaling caused. He explained that taking full responsibility, even when it feels unfair, is often the key to rebuilding trust with children. Backpedaling, on the other hand, only makes relationships worse. By walking back his accountability, Kody wasn't protecting himself, he was actively hurting the very children he claimed to care about. Mykelti's response was brave and public. She refused to let her father's performance go unchallenged. By speaking out, she validated her own experience and the experiences of her siblings. She showed that children can recognize manipulation even when it comes from a parent, and that they don't have to silently accept rewritten history. The impact of Kody's backpedaling goes beyond just Mykelti. Every time he performs accountability and then walks it back, he's sending a clear message to his children: his words cannot be trusted, and any vulnerability is potentially a manipulation tactic. This isn't speculation, it's a pattern that's been repeated time and again. For Mykelti, the betrayal is intensely personal. She allowed herself to hope, to feel that maybe her father could change. She cried when she saw his apparent growth, only to have that hope crushed when she discovered it was all strategic performance. Her trust has been broken in a way that will take years if it can ever be fully restored. Her siblings are observing as well. Even if they haven't spoken publicly like Mykelti, they are witnessing the same pattern of behavior: accountability followed by immediate backtracking, vulnerability followed by blame shifting, promises followed by broken trust. Each repetition erodes whatever tiny amount of trust might still exist. It's not that they don't want reconciliation, it's that Kody is actively destroying any chance of it. What makes this particularly tragic is that Mykelti was one of the few children still willing to engage with her father. She gave him chances that others, understandably, would not. She could have been a bridge to his other children, showing that reconciliation was possible if he maintained genuine accountability. But Kody squandered that opportunity. By publicly reversing his accountability, he made it clear that his ego and narrative were more important than his children's well-being. The consequences of Kody's behavior are stark. He's losing the trust of the children who were still willing to hope. He's teaching them that tears, apologies, and vulnerability can all be used as tools of manipulation. And he's proving time and time again that he prioritizes protecting himself over repairing relationships with the people who matter most. Social media and fan communities have overwhelmingly supported Mykelti. People recognize the courage it takes to publicly call out a parent's lies, especially in a high-profile family like the Browns. But beyond public support, Mykelti's action validates her siblings' experiences. By speaking out, she gives them permission to acknowledge the truth of their own relationships with Kody, and to refuse to let him rewrite history. For younger children who are still navigating their relationships with him, Mykelti's statements are a crucial warning. Trust your instincts. Believe your own experiences. Don't let his performance fool you. Kody's tears on special forces, once seen as a breakthrough, are now viewed by those closest to him as calculated strategy. The broader lesson here is clear: Kody's behavior isn't just disappointing, it's actively damaging. Every time he performs accountability only to walk it back, he is inflicting fresh emotional wounds on his children. He is eroding trust, crushing hope, and teaching them that his apologies and vulnerability are tools of manipulation, rather than signs of genuine growth. Mykelti's courage in speaking out is pivotal. She has refused to let her father rewrite history without challenge. She has called out his lies, confronted his false narratives about their relationships, and exposed the performative nature of his so-called breakthroughs. In doing so, she is not only protecting herself, but also giving her siblings permission to acknowledge the truth of their experiences. They can see that they are not imagining the betrayal, they are not alone in recognizing the manipulation. Kody's delusion lies in thinking he can have it both ways: perform growth for praise and positive attention, then walk it back to protect his ego. But the consequences are cumulative. The more he backtracks, the more irreparable the damage becomes. Trust once broken this thoroughly is nearly impossible to rebuild without consistent, sustained accountability, and Kody has repeatedly demonstrated that he lacks the capacity for it. Tony's insight is crucial here. Taking full responsibility, even when it feels unfair, can bring a parent closer to their children. But Kody refuses that path. Instead, he distributes blame, rewrites history, and prioritizes his own comfort over the fragile connections with his children. By doing so, he has likely destroyed any remaining opportunity for reconciliation with Mykelti, one of the few children still willing to hope. The pattern is undeniable: accountability followed by backtracking, vulnerability followed by deflection, promises followed by broken trust. His children, having lived through this repeatedly, are learning that his words cannot be relied upon. Mykelti learned it the hard way by allowing herself to be vulnerable, while other siblings are seeing it play out in real time. The result is emotional trauma, fractured relationships, and the near-certain estrangement of those who had any willingness to engage with him.